So the setup's really simple. Make sure you turn on the drawing guide, and you want to make sure you have it set up so that the grid is showing, and this is going to be the guides for your letter. So I like to use the 6B pencil when I sketch out my designs. So the first thing I do is normally just sketch out a design in pencil. So here you'll see I'm going to start building the letter R, and I'm using very geometric shapes to create the R. So for the main stem, I'm just using straight lines, and I'm going to start with a rectangle. So really tall rectangle to build the R. And then I'm going to start creating a round circular edge for the rest of the R, and again another one. So again, using very geometric shapes. And in this case, I'm using a circular shape. And then I'm adding that little front end of the R, and that's pretty much it. That is my R. So next, what I like to do is add more details to the letters. I'm adding more flourishes here. So you'll see I'm adding these little bits to each part of the R. That way we can stylize and update the design however we want. So this is why I like to recommend starting off with just a plain letter and then building off of it. So now that I have my plain R, I'm just adding these little flourishes to the top and the bottom of the letter. So you'll see it's really easy, just adding these little flourishes. It doesn't have to be perfect. So this is my sketch, and I'm going to use my sketch as the main source for designing. So now I want you to take that layer and reduce the opacity to about 40 to 50%. This is the layer we're going to use as a guide. So I like to use the inking pen. So this is the inking technical pen from Procreate. It comes with Procreate. And then I'm going to trace the letter R. So I'm doing my best to trace exactly this letter. I like to save the little flourishes for the top and the bottom and just use straight lines for the main portion of the letter. So you'll see I'm just filling in these areas of the R. Once I complete it, I can go ahead and erase different parts of the R, but for now, I'm just going to try to trace it as much as I can to fit the guides that are behind. So try to trace it as much as you can to fit the guide that is behind this layer. So we want to trace this sketched out R. And again, you can move the screen around to make it easier for you to trace. I am constantly, redoing, undoing work on the Procreate because it's pretty much easy to just undo your work, and you want to make sure, for me, I want to make sure it looks good. So I'll just keep on doing it until I think it looks good. So again, I'm using very geometric shapes, and in this case, I'm making a very circular shape to fit the R. You can also, hold down to create perfect arcs or perfect lines. Sometimes I do it, sometimes I don't. It just depends on your preference. So again, I'm almost done with this. I'm just filling in the rest of the piece, making sure it all looks nicely. So now that this piece looks pretty much done, I'm going to take the eraser and I'm going to erase the parts of the R that we don't need. So I just want it to be a simple outline. So this is really important because we want to just have a simple outline for this piece, because I'm going to show you how to create a little bevel towards the end of this video, but for now, just keep it as a simple outline. So now we can actually go ahead and, go back into this letter and fix little areas that we want to fix. So here there's a little indent. I want to make sure that the line looks even. So I'm going to go ahead and fix that. Just zooming in on the part and then just fixing it. So I'm going to go ahead and fix little areas of the R and make sure they fit nicely, make sure the lines are nicely, make sure there's no little pieces of line that are sticking out. So there are pieces that I want to use the eraser and erase off a bit of it. So I'm going to go ahead and do that for the rest of the letter. So our letter looks good now. So now I want you to make a duplicate of that outline and then delete the sketch layer. So you don't need that anymore. So now we have 2 layers of this outline letter R, and I want you to go to the bottom layer and I want you to fill it in. So in this case, I'm going to start off by filling it in with just the color black, and then I'm going to fill it in with the color pink. So I filled it in that way because our outline was black, so that way the whole letter gets filled in. And then for the top layer, I'm going to take a darker pink and fill it in. And you can hold down on the screen from left to right to reduce or increase threshold. So you can see here, I'm holding down the screen, and essentially what threshold does, it kind of decides how much of that layer you want to fill. So the farther you go right, the more full or filled in the letter or content will be. So now I want you to go back to that bottom layer and make a duplicate of it, and then make it the very bottom layer and pull it down to the side. We're going to make dimension to this letter now. So let's fill it in with some red, and it's already starting to look 3D and it's already starting to come to light. So make sure the bottom layer is selected and grab your technical pen and connect that little shadow at the very bottom to the top layer. So essentially you're still working on the bottom layer, the very bottom layer, and you want to make sure that it looks like it's connecting to that top layer. So I'm just, connecting the top to the bottom in the angle that it's occurring in. So right now the shadow is going to the bottom right, and so all of my angles, I want them to go to the bottom right. There's different ways you can create 3D letters in Procreate. I just like to do it this way because I'm really particular and I want to make sure that it looks right. So I like to do it this way. It's just my preference, but it's up to you however you want to do it. So again, I'm just filling in all of those areas, filling in the round area, just so it all connects seamlessly. So now it looks really good already. It already looks like a three-dimensional letter, but now we all just want to pay attention to this. We have 3 different layers. We have a outline layer, we have the pink layer, and then we have the bottom shadow layer. So the next thing I want to do is add more detail. So I want you to create a new layer and create a clipping mask for the last layer. So these are the last 2 bottom layers. And then once you get a darker red and grab the sketching brush, which is the Bonobo chalk brush, and then we're going to use this to add shadow. So it's at the very bottom. I'm not sure where it is for you, but it's in my sketching brushes in Procreate. So for the shadow, I want to pretend that the light is coming from the top down. So all the shadow should be forming at the very bottom of the letter. So in these areas, the bottom of the stem, the bottom of that little part of the R. So fill in those bottom areas with shadow with that red, and then even up on the side. So it's as if the shadow is going up the round part of the R. Then I want you to grab a darker red, and I'll give you guys this color palette in the comments. And you can fill in the dark red however you want for the letter. You can do it from the very back to the front. You can make it from the left to the right. Different ways you could do this, but I'm going to actually do it from the left to the right. So it's kind of like it's getting dark from the very, very edge of the left side and then lighter on the right side. So I'm doing this for every portion where I added that red. I'm putting the dark red, slowly adding it to that little light red, and it's kind of giving it more of a blending technique, so the shadow's blending much easier. And I turned off my canvas because I don't really need it anymore. That way you can see much better with what I'm doing. So next I want you to grab the eraser, and I like to use the monoline eraser, and we're going to erase parts of that shadow. So wherever there's a corner, we want to make sure that it's erased. So we want to make sure that it actually looks like that's shadow. So I'm going ahead and erasing all of the parts of that shadow area that wouldn't necessarily have shadow. So it's only the bottom parts that should have shadow. Everything that's getting light from the right side should not have shadow. So you see I'm just erasing. It's really easy, just simply erasing those parts, and already it's coming together super, super nicely. Okay, so now the next thing I want to do is I want to add more detail to this. So I'm actually going to go to the very top layer, which is the outline of the R, that dark pink, and I want to give it this bevel type of look. I want it to look shiny. So I'm going to choose the top layer and create a new layer on top of that layer, and I'm going to choose the inking pen. So again, I'm choosing the inking technical pen, the one I've been using this entire time, and I'm going to pick the color white. So you'll see here we need to make a clipping mask, and here we go. We can start adding these diagonal lines, and this gives the illusion that the letter is shiny, that there's a bevel that's maybe silver and it's really shiny. And you can change how thick these white lines are, just make them in the same diagonal direction. Whichever way you're doing it, make sure the angle is all the same. So you can see it already looks super shiny and it looks really, really cool. Just very, very simple techniques you can add to your lettering. So the next thing I want you to do is grab that filled in layer, which is the pink layer, and you're going to create a layer on top of that and a clipping mask. And now we're going to add some more shadow. So I want you to go back to the sketching brushes, and I want you to choose the Bonobo chalk. So here I'm trying to find it, and I grab it. I'm just going to pull it up to the top because it's kind of hard for me to find sometimes. And then again, I'm going to use this brush to create shadow. So I'm going to make the shadow coming from the right side of the letter, as if the bevel's, creating some shadow on the letter. So I'm going to be filling it in all on the right side of the letter. And I'm going to pick a darker one because I think the light one was a bit too light. And so just filling in on the right side. So do this for all parts of the right side of the R, not on the left side, only on the right side. We want to pretend that the shadow is coming off on the right side. So just from the top to the bottom on that stem, and then on the right side of that round portion of the R, we want to make sure we do that. So I like to actually grab the Bonobo chalk brush and make it the eraser pen. So I'm erasing parts of that shadow just so it looks like it blends better, and it's not just so this big old chalk sketch or chalk texture. And then I'm gonna go ahead and grab the inking brush again, so the inking technical pen, and I'm gonna go around it. So I want you to grab a darker pink that we already have, and then just go around the edge. So we're giving this more of a shadow. We want to make sure that it's feels more like a shadow, just go on along the edge, and we're going to blend it in a little bit. So now I'm going to grab the eraser pen again, and I'm going to use that Bonobo chalk brush as the eraser, and I'm going to erase it little by little on the edge, just so not too much, just make it blend a little bit more with the letter, make that shadow blend a little bit more, not make it so apparent that there's like a straight line there. So our letter looks already good, the shadow looks amazing, very simple. So I want to add more detail to this. So create a new layer. So this should be at the very top layer, and then grab the inking technical pen. So it should look like this and make it about 75% thick. Depends on how much you want it thick. This is just going to be created for shine. So I'm adding these little lines on the right side of the R to make it look shiny. It's a really easy technique to just make your letters stand out a bit more. So another little fun tip that you can do to really make your letter stand out. So I'm going to go ahead and group all of these layers into one. So now we have our letter R, and I'm going to add a background color. So now I want to add some more details. So I'm going to add a shadow to this entire layer. So I'm going to grab that pink R, so that main color R, I'm going to duplicate that layer and bring it all the way to the bottom. So make sure it's outside of that group layer. And then I'm going to grab the very bottom red layer and duplicate that again and bring it all the way to the bottom. So make sure you're grabbing the one that's closest to the bottom. So I'm going to group that layer. I'm going to group those two layers together, and then I'm going to pull them down to the left corner. So it kind of looks like we're creating a new shadow. And then I'm going to fill in those layers so that they're the same color. So I'm first going to bring them over to the left bottom side, and you can kind of see them. We're going to pull them down. And then I'm going to open up that group, and I'm going to make sure they're both filled in the same color. So I just want to make sure that they're both the same color. Right now I'm just going to use red, and then I'm going to flatten this layer. So now it's just one main shape. So I'm going to pull it again to the left side, make sure it looks good. And we have our shadow. Now I'm going to change the color to the color black. So I'm going to fill that in, and then I'm going to reduce the opacity on that. So by reducing the opacity, you give the illusion that there's more shadow for the background. So again, I'm going to connect it to our main layer, or our main letter, to give the illusion that it's the shadow coming off the letter. So it even makes it look more 3D by just doing this really simple technique, connecting it and making this already three-dimensional letter, have some shadow. And that's pretty much it. Our letter has come to life looking really 3D with a bunch of shadow and texture. So this is my technique for creating a three-dimensional letter by using shadows, using textures, and now I'd love to see you try this out. Let me know in the comments what you think.